Welcome to our deep dive today. It's into Chinua Achebe's Things Fall Apart.
Okay.
You've shared some really powerful excerpts from the book with us, and it seems like you're interested in getting a deeper understanding of the
Yeah.
characters, the themes, and that vibrant Igbo culture that
Uh,
Achebe portrays. So let's jump right in.
okay.
One of the things that struck me right away was Okonkwo.
Yeah.
He's introduced as this incredibly successful and driven man, someone who's worked hard to overcome his father's legacy of failure.
Yes. Okonkwo's drive is palpable from the very beginning.
Yeah.
He's determined to prove himself, to achieve status and respect in his community.
But it seems like there's more to it than just personal ambition. You've highlighted passages that focus on Okonkwo's obsession with masculinity and strength. What's
Yeah.
going on there?
What's fascinating here is how Achebe connects Okonkwo's drive for success to a deep-seated fear of weakness. Remember that passage where, even as a young man, Okonkwo had already gained titles, won wrestling matches, and accumulated wealth? It's almost like he's trying to distance himself from his father, Unoka, who was seen as lazy and irresponsible.
So achieving titles, wealth, even winning wrestling matches. These weren't just personal achievements, they were markers of masculinity in Igbo society.
Precisely these achievements were essential to proving oneself as a man, worthy of respect in the Igbo world. And it's this fear of being perceived as weak, like his father, that drives Okonkwo to such extremes.
It's interesting how his intense drive for success is also what ultimately leads to his downfall.
Yeah.
The accidental shooting during Azuri's funeral, his exile, it feels like his own ambition and fear become his undoing.
It's a classic tragic hero arc when you say
Yeah.
Okonkwo's very strengths become his weaknesses, his inability to adapt, to change, his rigid adherence to traditional notions of masculinity.
Yeah.
These ultimately contribute to his tragic end.
And speaking of the Igbo world, you've highlighted some passages that really delve into their culture.
Yes.
What stood out to you as you were reading these excerpts? What makes their society so unique?
The Igbo culture depicted in the novel is incredibly vibrant and intricate. Their social structure, their spiritual beliefs, their customs and traditions, it's also richly detailed. One thing that struck me was the importance of titles, achievement and age.
Okay.
These are the pillars upon which social standing is built in their society.
You also mentioned the role of oracles priests and the significance of the earth goddess, Ani. Can you tell us more about their spiritual beliefs?
The Igbo have a deep reverence for the spiritual world.
Okay.
They believe in a multitude of gods and goddesses, each with their own specific domain and influence. Ani, the earth goddess, is particularly important, as she represents fertility and the life-giving force of the land.
And then there's the concept of Chi, the personal god. That guides an individual's destiny. What a fascinating concept. It's almost like a person's inner spirit shaping their fate.
Yes, but it's also tied to personal choice. There's that Igbo proverb,
Yeah.
when a man says yes, his chi says yes also. This suggests that individuals have agency in shaping their destiny, even with chi influencing their path.
It makes you wonder, considering Okonkwo's tragic fate, whether his choices aligned with his chi or whether he defied it,
Right.
it definitely adds another layer of complexity to his character.
Absolutely, and it speaks to the Igbo understanding of fate and free will, a concept that's explored in many cultures throughout history.
The excerpts you've chosen also highlight some specific customs and rituals like the sharing of kola nuts and the Isaifi ceremony.
Right.
What's the significance of these practices in Igbo society?
These rituals provide a window into the Igbo worldview.
Okay.
The kola nut ritual, for instance,
Hmm.
symbolizes hospitality and respect. Sharing kola nuts with guests is a way of fostering goodwill and strengthening social bonds.
And the Isaifi ceremony, I found that one particularly intriguing.
The Isaifi is a ritual intended to ensure a wife's fidelity before she returns to her husband after a separation. It involves consulting with a priest and undergoing a purification process. It's fascinating how deeply tradition and ritual are woven into the fabric of Igbo life.
It seems like these rituals are about more than just social customs. They reveal a deeper understanding of their spiritual beliefs, their values, their fears. It's like a whole other way of seeing the world.
Exactly. And this world, as we know, is about to be disrupted by the arrival of a force that will challenge everything the Igbo hold dear. Colonialism.
From the excerpts you shared, it seems like the arrival of the white missionaries marks a turning point in the novel.
Yeah.
As you were reading about their initial interactions with the Igbo, what struck you most about the way Achebe depicts this encounter? What did it make you feel?
Achebe masterfully captures the clash between two vastly different worldviews. The missionaries arrive with their message of a one true God, attempting to discredit the Igbo deities and convert them to Christianity. But to the Igbo, their gods are real, tangible forces in their lives. They don't understand this concept of a single, all-powerful God.
And it's not just about spiritual beliefs, is it? It feels like there's a power struggle at play here. The missionaries aren't just trying to convert individuals, they're trying to dismantle an entire cultural system.
You're absolutely right. The missionaries represent a new order, a new set of values that directly challenge the existing power structures of the Igbo.
It's interesting how Achebe portrays the different approaches taken by the missionaries. We have Mr. Brown, who seems to represent a more subtle, even somewhat respectful approach to spreading Christianity.
Mr. Brown's approach is certainly more nuanced.
Yeah.
He attempts to understand the Igbo culture, engaging in conversations and seeking common ground.
Yeah.
His discussions with Akuna about the nature of Chukwu, the supreme god, highlight this attempt at cultural exchange.
Yes. I remember that passage where they debate whether Chukwu created all the other gods, or if there's only one god, as Mr. Brown believes. But even with his more tolerant approach, wasn't there still an element of paternalism in his actions? Building schools, a hospital? It seems like he was still trying to impose his own ideas of progress on the Igbo.
That's a valid point, Mr. Brown. Despite his efforts to understand the Igbo, still operates from a position of believing his culture, his religion is superior.
And then we have the arrival of Mr. Smith, his successor, who represents a much more rigid and uncompromising brand of Christianity. He seems to have no tolerance for the Igbo beliefs and customs.
Mr. Smith's arrival certainly escalates the tension in the novel. He embodies a more dogmatic approach to Christianity, seeing no room for compromise or acceptance of Igbo traditions.
Yeah.
Remember the incident where he suspends the woman who allowed her child to be mutilated?
Yes, the child was an ogbonje, and the mutilation was a traditional practice to prevent its return from the spirit world. But Mr. Smith denounced it as the work of the devil, completely dismissing the spiritual beliefs of the Igbo.
Mr. Smith's actions demonstrate a complete lack of understanding and respect for the Igbo worldview. His rigid adherence to his own beliefs further alienates the Igbo and contributes to the growing conflict between the two cultures.
And then there's the whole incident with Enoch, the overzealous convert who unmasks an egugru during a sacred ritual. That felt like a pivotal moment in the novel, a real turning point.
Enoch's act is a blatant disregard for the sanctity of Igbo traditions, a complete act of sacrilege. It's a moment that highlights the clash between the old ways and the traditional beliefs and the encroaching influence of Christianity.
Reading about the destruction of the church by the Igwugwu, I felt a sense of both triumph and dread. It's a powerful act of defiance, but you know it's going to lead to dire consequences.
It's a complex moment, isn't it?
Yeah.
On one hand, you have the Igbo people asserting their power, defending their beliefs and traditions. But on the other hand, you know that their actions will be met with swift and brutal retaliation from the colonial authorities.
And that's exactly what happens. The district commissioner returns, arrests the leaders of Umuofia, and imposes a hefty fine.
The response of the colonial authorities highlights the power imbalance at play. The Igbo, despite their strength and resilience, are ultimately at the mercy of a system that views them as primitive and in need of civilizing.
It feels like this sense of injustice, this feeling of being utterly powerless, ultimately leads to Okonkwo's final act of defiance.
His suicide is a tragic ending, but it also speaks to the depth of his despair and his unwillingness to live in a world that no longer makes sense to him. He chooses to die by his own hand rather than be completely consumed by a system that has stripped him of his dignity and his identity.
His death, though tragic, can be interpreted as a powerful statement against the forces that have destroyed his world.
Yes, it's a statement against the loss of his culture, his identity, his sense of self. And it leaves us, the readers, grappling with a profound sense of loss and a lingering question: what happens when a culture collapses? What happens when the things that hold the people together fall apart?
That's a question that resonates far beyond the pages of this novel. It challenges us to consider the lasting impact of colonialism and the struggles of cultures caught between tradition and modernity. But amidst all this loss and tragedy, there's also a glimmer of hope. You highlighted a passage where Ushendu Okonkwo's uncle consoles him during his exile, reminding him that mother is supreme. That quote really struck me too. Okonkwo is utterly lost, grieving his exile and the life he's left behind.
And Ushendu, in his wisdom, reminds him that the motherland is always there, a source of comfort and strength when all else fails. He compares it to a child seeking refuge in his mother's hut, when his father is angry.
Such a powerful metaphor. It's like saying that even when things fall apart, there's still this deeper connection, this sense of belonging that can't be erased.
Yes, and this idea of mother is supreme extends beyond just the physical land. It speaks to the resilience of the Igbo spirit, their ability to find strength and solace in their cultural identity, even in the face of unimaginable loss.
We've talked about the clash of cultures, the destructive impact of colonialism, and the tragic downfall of Okonkwo. But this quote from Ushendu seems to offer a different perspective.
It suggests that even though things fall apart, the core of who they are, their connection to their ancestors, their land, their traditions, it remains unbroken.
It makes me think about Okonkwo's final act in a new light. His suicide, while undeniably tragic, can also be seen as a final assertion of his agency, his refusal to be completely defined by the forces that have sought to control him.
It's a complex and deeply moving ending, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okonkwo chooses to die on his own terms rather than submit to a system that has stripped him of his power and his dignity.
As we reach the end of our deep dive into Things Fall Apart, I'm left with a sense of both sadness and admiration. Sadness for the loss of a vibrant culture, for the tragic fate of Okonkwo and so many others who were caught in the crossfire of colonialism. But also admiration for the resilience of the human spirit, for the enduring power of storytelling, for Achebe's ability to capture the complexities of a world in transition.
It's a novel that stays with you long after you've finished reading it, isn't it?
It really does.
It challenges us to think critically about the legacies of colonialism, the impact of cultural change, and the search for identity in a world that's constantly shifting beneath our feet.
And it reminds us that even when things fall apart, something essential remains. A spark of resilience, a connection to something larger than ourselves, a story that continues to be told, passed down from generation to generation, reminding us of who we are and where we come from.
And for our listener, thank you for joining us on this journey into the heart of Chinua Achebe's masterpiece. We hope this deep dive has provided you with new insights and perspectives on this powerful and enduring work of literature.
We encourage you to continue exploring the world of Achebe's writing and to keep asking those tough questions about culture, identity, and the forces that shape our world.